Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a brand new book news video for the month of July. We had 6 big stories break this month. Some of them broke really recently as I'm recording this video, and so I decided to cover all of them in this, and I'll have links down below and time codes down below as well. We have new book announcements, we have new cover arts, we have book delays, and we have other book news. So let's go ahead and start with my first story, which is for Star Wars. We had some new books announced at San Diego Comic-Con. For those of you who are not aware, at San Diego Comic-Con, they do a big publishing panel every year. This year, they had a pretty large room, had a pretty big panel, and they talked about not just publishing, but also about some video games as well. And while there was news for different areas, such as the video game tie-ins, like some art of books, and some TV show tie-ins, like the visual dictionaries, I'm going to be focusing this talking about the novels that were announced. And we did get 2 new novels announced for Star Wars. We got an adult novel from Random House Worlds, which is coming out May 6th, 2025. This is a novel tying into the Acolyte TV show, which is going to be talking about Vernestra Rauch and Master Indara from the show. And Vernestra is a character who was really big in the High Republic novels, and she also was the only High Republic character to jump into the show. And so this is going to be a prequel book. The title, I believe, is Wayseeker, and it is by Justina Ireland. And then we also got an announcement for a new YA novel. This is a new young adult novel by Tessa Gratton, who's also done a lot of Star Wars books. And that YA novel is titled, is untitled yet, but it's about Jeki and Yord, and that book will be coming out in July 29, 2025, so about a year from now, actually. And that's also, of course, a tie-in to The Acolyte. And this was actually a big surprise to a lot of us in the industry, because we were expecting some other books to be announced, which have not yet been announced, but we are pretty sure are coming. So this was a big surprise. And if I can take a moment to editorialize on this, I'll say that I firmly am in the camp that from a pure business perspective, not talking about my personal feelings on how I felt The Acolyte was as a show, from a pure business perspective, it does not make sense to continue the series as a TV show because of the poor response and the poor ratings that it's produced on the Nielsen ratings, which are the lowest of any of the High Republic shows, or not High Republic, of all the live action shows for Star Wars thus far. So from a business sense, it doesn't make sense to continue the series. But you can move it from television and tell a lot of the stories in the novels, which the novel fans tend to be much more forgiving and understanding and nice and respectful. There are, of course, those who aren't respectful, but I think it will serve the story better to do it in the novels. Let the TV shows focus on the more crowd-pleasing stuff like Andor and The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. So those new novels were announced. We don't have cover art for them yet, but we do know one's coming. The adult novel's coming in May. The other novel's coming in July, the YA one. And I posted about this on X, and a certain Star Wars editor, when I was questioning about other potential stuff happening, his only answer to me was, stay tuned. So we'll see what happens with Star Wars. The second piece of book news I have is actually a really fascinating story. This is that Christopher Rocchio's Sun Eater series is returning to DAW Books. For those of you who are unaware, Christopher Rocchio started his Sun Eater series as a big science fiction series like Dune and Star Wars, but he started it over at DAW Books, which is a publisher. They've done a lot of big authors in the past. They're a really entrenched, famous publisher. But after the 5th book came out, there was a kind of a falling out between Christopher Rocchio and the publisher, and instead he went over to Baen Books, and he got a great contract to do books 6 and 7 at Baen. And so book 6 came out, that was Disquiet Gods, came out earlier this year, had really solid numbers. And then just this month, we got news from Christopher Rocchio himself that DAW Books had decided to purchase back the rights from Baen for the series. So basically, DAW went to Baen and said, "We'll pay you. We want the rights to the series for the books 6 and 7 to continue them." So they're going to do paperback copies of books 6 and 7 and hardcovers as well. And so if you want to have like a full matching set, Baen tried their best to keep book 6 similar to the other books in hardcover, but if you want a pure matching set that's all from DAW, you will be able to get that going forward. And book 7, which is supposed to come out next year, will come out from DAW instead of Baen. And this is just a fascinating turn of events to me from a business side, because it is very rare for one publisher to drop a series for another publisher to pick it up, and then the first publisher realize that they needed that series so bad, and they would go back and buy back the rights. That just doesn't happen in the business. So good for Christopher Ruocchio, good for Baen, who got paid, good for DAW, which is getting more books that they'll get to publish, and good for us that we'll get more stories. So with that, let's move on to my next story today, which is some cover art. We got cover art for book 6 in Larry Correia's Saga of the Forgotten Warrior. That book is titled Heart of the Mountain, and its cover art looks like this. It is cover art by Curt Miller. That book is the final book in the series. It's coming out in February of next year. But before that, we have book 5, which is coming out in November of this year. Book 5 looks like this, and book 6 looks a little bit different from the rest of the series. However, it still kind of evokes the same ideas, and I'm really excited to get into this series once I finish Larry Correia's Monster Hunter series. If you've read the Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, do you think it's worth it? A lot of booktubers sure do now. So my next book news story is actually a publishing correction for a publishing release date story I did last month. Last month, I brought you the news that the Icarus Saga finale was going to be publishing in January. And when I brought you that news, that is what the Amazon link said, and that was what the available information said. But that appears to be different now. It appears that the news has changed, and it will now be releasing in April of 2025. So it's not a long wait. It's just a few more months, but I did provide you the incorrect release date for that. We do not have the cover for that book yet, but I expect to get it in the next couple of months, probably around the time that Dragon Con comes around. And then on my next story I have is about Strange New Worlds' new book, Asylum, which comes out in November. And this is basically like a where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? My question is, where in the world is this cover art? This is a weird thing to cover in book news, but just hear me out. We got book cover art for the next book in the series, for book 3. We got book 1 in 2023, we're getting book 2 in 2024, and we're getting book 3 in 2025. So that makes sense. We have cover art for book 3 from James Swallow's new novel, which is Toward the Night, which looks like this. We have that cover art. That book comes out way later. But we don't have the cover art for Asylum yet. And Asylum comes out in this November, just a couple months away. So it's really curious why we haven't gotten that. That is a very fascinating question, and hopefully we get that cover art soon, because we are not far away from that pub date. So that's that story. Where in the world is the cover art for this book? My 6th and final story of the day is about Terry Brooks's Shannara series. Terry Brooks announced a few months ago that we were getting a new Shannara series, the first, I think it was like the first Druid series, and it was starting with the book Gallifile, and we now have the cover art for Gallifile with cover art by Eva Eller. And this is not my favorite cover art in Terry Brooks's series, but it still has more of an artistic feel than some of his recent covers, which have felt more just photorealistic. A lot of his recent covers, it feels like the publisher wanted to do modern trends, and this cover seems to be going at least a step back towards traditional cover art. I wish they'd take a couple more steps back, but still, this is interesting cover art. This book comes out in March of 2025. So that is all the book news for the month of July that I'm covering. If you have any thoughts on any of these, I'm sure I will get a bunch of comments about The Acolyte. But if you have any thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.